Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library. It's the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in Central Iowa. We have the John Hendrickson and myself today ready to thrill and excite you on another episode on the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. John, how are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Good. Been waiting all day for me to get around to actually getting up here in the studio and hit record, but yet here we are. So lots of notes ready to go. You do not have a coffee with you, which concerns me a great deal.
Yeah,
I don't know if that...
I forgot to bring one up, actually.
Do we need to stop, folks? I mean, it's, take a little 5-minute pause.
Let's do remember those old intermissions that used to be in those old movies?
Go back to the movie. Whatever.
Go back to the concessions or
a little animated thing.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. I'm trying to think of the last movie I saw in a movie theater that had an intermission.
I think the one,
I know what it is though. Now that I think about that,
I think the one I saw was it was Battle of the Bulge with Henry Fonda.
Okay, what year would that have been in? I mean,
I can't remember. Yeah. I was young.
Okay, mine was Dances with Wolves.
Okay,
the full theatrical, which I think was well over 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
that was a long movie.
Yeah, I've always loved that movie.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, this is our post-session recap episode, which I think folks have been ready for us to do. So we let the dust settle. Been getting asked a lot about what's in here. We've talked about it. We've had some articles, newsletter out, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about it a little bit today. First thing is trivia, though.
Yes.
You ready to go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We had a one winner from last week. Or the question was, what was the first major state tax that was levied? And the answer was it was the cigarette tax, a 2-cent cigarette tax.
Interesting.
And
what's old is new again.
Yes. Yeah. And so that was an issue in the session, and so. One of our listeners, Roger, who emailed actually right away, just a few minutes after you posted the show.
Wow.
Sent in the response.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So he was our winner. So we're going to go back to the Civil War for this week, and so this month in early May, there was a key battle in the Civil War in 1863 that was a decisive win for General Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia, and they defeated fighting General Joe Hooker and the Union Army, but it also cost the life of Stonewall Jackson, and it was considered sort of the high water mark of Robert E. Lee's considered his brilliant victory, but also the high water mark of the Confederacy because and then after this, it was then he decided to talk Jefferson Davis into letting him go north.
That's right.
Which ended up into Gettysburg. So what was the early battle in May of 1863?
I'm not good at this. As listeners, if you're not really plugged in, as you may have guessed, John has Civil War history is your thing, right? That is the thing. So, for those of us that aren't as well versed on that, I don't know. I could guess, but I'd just be guessing random Civil War battles. But anyway, well, very good. There you go, folks. And okay, so what happened during the legislative session? That's kind of our big job here today. Much as I think if you've seen any news account of the session is that it went all weekend. They got done Sunday late afternoon, early evening, about however you want to do it. So they were there all week. And maybe I'll come back around and talk about that process a little bit. Being there all night and into the morning. I know there's specifically I saw Senator Dave Sayers had some pretty strong words about that. And look, nobody enjoys that. But they worked through some differences, put a bow on the state budget. And the piece that seemingly held up adjournment was the property tax bill, right?
Yes.
So
that was a.
So they were kind of putting together, what would that final package look like? There was a while there, John, where it looked like we may not get a property tax bill at all.
Yes. Yeah.
They were quite a ways apart. So, let's talk about some of the main components. So, I guess just to make the main thing, Iowans for Tax Relief set out over the last couple of years, and frankly throughout our almost our history as an organization, supporting the idea of a 2% revenue limitation on cities and counties. The premise being you have to restrict what government has, and if you don't do that in a very strong spending restriction, you never get the property tax relief that you need. So, to make the main thing, we got a 2% revenue limitation in this bill. So that's a good thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So walk us through that. We've talked at length about why that's important, but what is and not in that 2% revenue limitation? If I'm saying that right, but I'm just going to let you. Here's open mic time for John Hendrickson on 2%.
So basically, the 2% cap is applied to the both the city and counties. The exceptions is debt service and schools, and then also benefits, wages, things like that. There's I'm drawing a blank, but there was a police levy. Yep. Yeah, that was in there. That was an exempt. Also, there was some other caps that were placed. For example, there was I think a 3% cap on DART, and then there was a 4% cap on county hospitals, and so there was so it wasn't a complete across the board 2% cap, but on the general and county and city levies, that was a 2% cap that was applied.
So the thing that I think we kind of felt like was going to be exempted from this all along was the new growth. So it just to be clear what it is we're talking about there, it probably applies more to the fast-growing cities, Ankeny, Waukee, Bettendorf, North Liberty, whatever. That those new permits, new construction, or if you build onto your house, that adds to the tax base, the number of parcels, and so that would be added to that base before the calculation of the 2%. Okay, I can philosophically understand that. I still would rather have that hard cap on there, but that's okay. And the debt service levy, we've kind of kicked that around a little bit. Specifically, we got to, again, figure out exactly what all these things mean, but if something's voter approved, the people in the district say, yes, we want that new aquatic center. Well, okay, you get to pay for it then. So we kind of understand that. But anyway, there's all those things exempted from that. But at the end of the day, it's a 2% revenue limitation. That's a good thing, right?
It is, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. There is in there some new tax increment financing provisions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and walk through that just a little bit.
Yeah, there was some guardrails put on TIF, and that's always been very hard to do. Again, TIF is an economic development tool that's been used by localities in terms of incentives for building various development projects, whether it be housing or businesses, and then so this bill put on some guardrails. There's a 23-year limit that has been established on TIF projects, and then and so I think overall there's been some mild, I would call it some mild limitations put on that for the most part I think seem very sensible that I think most cities can work with.
Good.
Within that framework.
Yeah, we saw in the news, you talked about this in pre-production, John. The city of Des Moines was really lamenting those TIF restrictions. I think they use the perpetual TIF quite a bit. But
Yes, yeah.
we've talked for years about reasonable guardrails on the system, and I think these are very reasonable limits on there. I'm just clicking through some of these, John. The one that I think will provide the most relief is the changes to the school funding formula.
Yes, yeah.
Now, we can try and dissect how it works, but I think we're going to lose a lot of the folks that are choosing to listen to us instead of, rolling the sunroof back and blaring classic rock. So we got to keep this fun and exciting.
Yes.
Remember, that's been my thing all along.
That's right, yeah.
But the school funding formula, there's a fixed amount that is paid for by property taxes. Then there's a second, whatever. But anyway, that first bid is $5.40 per $1,000 of taxable value. Well, that got reduced to $4.90.
Yes, yep.
So immediately off the top, the state will pick up a little bit more of school funding, which we haven't always been really crazy about. However, that's being accounted for by changes to SAVE, correct?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So it's all tied together.
Yeah.
So you're going to save some, but it's because we're going to pull a little bit more money back from school infrastructure, hopefully from the construction of new athletic facilities and natatoriums to bring down the cost to taxpayers, right? Did I say that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So SAVE is going to be extended. And then what they're going to do is slowly start increasing the amount of the portion of the penny of SAVE funds that goes to property tax relief. So basically by 2030, 25% of that will be dedicated to property tax relief. And so that's, I think I think you're right. That's going to be a key part of this, where you're going to see a lot of that savings. And so, it's going to be a gradual stair-stepping up, which is something I think, we've been talking about that for quite a while. And I think it's something that you thought about too in the legislature when you were in there, and as just increasing that.
When this goes back to when we reauthorized SAVE, and I believe it was in the 2018 session, but it's all kind of foggy in there. But SAVE was going to expire, so we reauthorized it for another 20 years or whatever it was. I don't know. But inside of that was how much of that full penny that gets collected in sales tax is going to be set aside for either property tax relief or other funding. I wanted that to be a lot more. If we were going to do this and continue to levy that 1 cent, I wanted as much of it as possible to go into property tax relief. And we did some, but I didn't get as much as I thought we probably should have at the time. So this goes back and hopefully at least increases that blend a little bit. Now, I did also reauthorize another 20 or 30 years on SAVE. So, I mean, we can pretty much we're going to have a school infrastructure penny for the rest of both of our lives in the state of Iowa. We just are. It's, I don't know how many more years you plan on being around, but I will be gone by the time SAVE expires. So anyway, it's done, guys. It's forever now. Or at least, you know what? The real thing is, yes, they can bond on it forever. That's all they really important thing, right? Is they continue to borrow against it. So, but anyway, I think that's a really important piece. Another one that I think we were at the front end on this one was this ending fund balance business that was in the property tax bill as well, where we found that there were some local governments that had just way too much money parked on the sidelines in their accounts.
Yes, yeah.
So speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, and so in the bill, and this applies for schools too, that they can only carry over a 35% ending balance, and so. And I think, and I could be wrong on this, but when I was reading the language, I think what happens is if a city has more than 35%, then their budget does not get certified by the Department of Management. Then it just goes back, and then they have to it reverts back to the previous year's budget. So I think that's the punishment for that, but. So I think that's a good mechanism, because otherwise, like you said, they're just going to, that's just piling up, sort of a war chest cash on the side there that could be going for.
My only fear in that, I think that's a very good thing, and we had talked about that they don't need to have that money, is that you will see a bunch of unnecessary spending of those dollars away to clear it off the books.
Yeah.
But we'll have to track that. But that sort of dovetails into what has been one of our main messages now that this bill has done, is that doesn't mean we have to stop keeping an eye on these local governments, right?
Yeah.
Because let me back up a minute. Is this a huge cut to Iowans' property taxes? Well, no, it's not. There is savings in there, and a lot of savings, but a lot of it is future contingent. Like, it would have been a lot worse without this bill, and idea of bending the cost curve down. But it's not just, okay, we passed a bill and now the problem is solved. This is contingent on Iowans continuing to keep an eye out on what's going on with their local governments.
That's
and
right.
In addition to some of these other things that we just talked about today. So that's important here. It doesn't absolve Iowans of the responsibility of staying involved in their local governments.
No, it doesn't. No.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think that's important point to make, because when it comes to this issue, I think a lot of people, and rightly so, they're frustrated with property tax bills and want to see relief. But at the same time, if you're looking at substantial relief, it would require, major cuts, and you just can't do that.
Well,
This is you have to have some. In terms of realistic.
Well, look,
in terms of budgeting and
I hope there's nobody out there that would accuse or believe that you and I are not core foundational fiscal conservatives who are eager to do the big thing on these issues. But we also, at the same time, accept that there are services that we accept that have to be provided. And with local governments, it's police and fire and roads.
Yeah.
And we're often accused of not wanting to fund those things, but that is not true. We just think they can be done better in priorities. At the state level, we have a robust public K-12 education system in this. We could save a lot of money if we didn't have one, but that's not also the suggestion here.
That's right.
And so it goes back to, we always thought that the 2% revenue limitation was actually the reasonable common sense solution here.
Yeah.
And that it's the aggressive kind of crazy thing is the idea that things should stay on autopilot, or that local governments should continue to be able to spend whatever they want and be made whole no matter what happens.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think that's a good point, and that has to be made. And I read an article yesterday about Massachusetts, and because they're going through a similar debate about their property tax cap, which is Proposition 2.5, and they're a high tax state, but that measure has basically been vital to their property taxpayers. Yeah. When it's all said and done.
Let's talk briefly about what was not in the final version of the bill, and I think there were key provisions of the Senate bill that were not in the final version of the bill. One being the gas tax. There was an inflation mechanism in there because the gas tax is a fixed number of cents and doesn't account for that. And the other one was the ability for an extra local option sales tax to go on to offset some of the provisions. Those weren't just jettisoned early on. They were fought over towards the end here. And talk about those pieces.
Yeah, these two are kind of sold as revenue enhancers to sort of cushion local governments through this process. And the gas tax was justified as indexing it to inflation in order to provide more funding for roads and bridges. And we heard the rhetoric that would make them safer and needing more funding for that. And
at least we didn't see school buses driving off the road like we did last time, right?
And that this was in a sense would solve some of those funding problems. One thing that I think torpedoed this too was just the war in Iran, and of course the rising gas prices put a lot of heat on this, and And especially, when it's close to $4, it might be $4 here. I don't know. Last time I filled up, it was.
I saw $4.29 the other day.
Yeah.
But other states are moving to suspend,
Yes, absolutely.
suspend gas taxes at the time. So that was a little
and then
just odd timing.
And then lost was local option sales tax, and allowing cities to increase that with the vote of the people, having them vote on that. But and again, and we've seen this already with how controversial is it when cities are going to raise the well, I'm drawing a blank. What is the Ankeny keeps rejecting it?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the local option sales.
Yeah. And so that can be very controversial, especially right now when whether you want to call it affordability or not, when that's a key issue on voters' minds, when is it a good idea to raise taxes, especially when the issue with this whole property tax issue is the central issue of this whole debate is government spending.
Right. Well, and it's the central issue of this current political environment is the issue of affordability. And how much does it cost us as Iowans or as Americans to live our lives?
Yes. Yeah.
And our tax burden is perhaps chief among them. And so are we shrinking that? So I know that was fought back against a lot by a lot of House Republicans. And Speaker Pat Grassley were just adamant that those pieces, not only were they going to get a 2% spending cap, but that those pieces would not be in that bill. And ultimately, they won out on that issue. So anyway, I think that's all good.
Two other provisions, I think, in that bill that, were scuttled. One was the attempt to repeal rollback.
Oh, yeah.
And then also the inflationary factor to the 2% cap, which was another thing that was omitted, which I think was a good thing.
I'll tell you a piece that was in both House, Senate, and Governor's initial proposals that did not make it into the final bill was anything specific for seniors.
Yes, yeah.
That not only, everybody started wanting to do something for seniors, and in the end, that fell off the wayside.
Yeah.
And I had strong feelings on that.
Yeah. But what's
I get
interesting,
the politics, but
I had a lot of people call or email Iowans and seniors disagreeing with that, basically saying, I selfishly, they said I would like that, but they realized that this would hurt their grandkids. I mean, this would shift the burden. A lot of Iowans understood that. I mean, they already saw
this nation is $39 trillion in debt.
Yep.
Because we have mortgaged every future generation of American.
Yeah.
We've sacrificed their future to meet the spending habits of the generation that now wants either a property tax freeze or a full exemption. I get the politics. I get that there are people for whom that is difficult. Property taxes suck for everyone.
Yes.
So I have strong feelings on that. It is time for us to tighten our belt and work on solutions that benefit everyone.
That's right.
So, good. Well, we covered all that. John, there's another thing that made it through the legislature at the end that we need to spend a little time talking about, and that is the 2/3 spending limitation, constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
Talk about that, because we talked about it. It was an ITR agenda item this year. It has been... look, constitutional amendments is hard-coded into ITR's DNA.
Yes, yeah.
I pulled back and looked at our founding documents, and they have multiple references to the need for constitutional protections.
Yes.
On tax policy. So at the end, the Iowa House took the, fourth final step. Each chamber has to do it twice, of passing that so that it will go on the ballot. Talk about a 2/3 constitutional amendment.
So I actually think this is maybe one of the most important things to come out of the session. Yeah. This is just my perspective. So I hope people don't get too angry, but it could be huge. Yeah, and so what this would do is it would require a 2/3 majority vote of both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, in order to raise the income tax or to create a new income tax. And so that could be raising the flat tax rate or creating a wealth tax, or just getting rid of the flat tax and creating going back to a progressive tax. And so this is an important taxpayer protection in many ways. And it's not I want to point out, because a lot of listeners may not know, this is not a radical idea. I think about at least 16 or 17 states have this thing in their constitutions. And it's not just red states but blue states. Like California has this. Swing states like Arizona have this as well. So it's not something that is a radical measure. It's just a common sense taxpayer protection that basically says, okay, if you want to increase taxes, it forces the legislature to build a consensus, and it basically says, instead of rushing to increase taxes, which is oftentimes an easy thing to do, this makes it a little bit more difficult. And one thing we're seeing this year, I think we're seeing at least a dozen or more states that are trying to do wealth taxes in order to try to either raise money for new spending or to fix budget shortfalls, or do both.
Mm-hmm. And this would, if adopted, would preclude that without a 2/3.
Yes,
vote.
yep.
Bottom line for me, it should be really hard to raise taxes. Apart from just the political difficulty of doing it, it just should be a high hurdle. And we've asked this in our polls in the past, and over 2/3 of Iowans support this measure. I'm not naive to think that there won't be opposition to this, and that number may fall back a little bit, because the forces of government that want as much of our tax money as possible, they're not going to like this idea, and they're going to come back and want to fight against it. And so we're going to be out trying to figure out the best way to communicate these ideas to Iowans. But we're here, and I'm looking forward to it, because I love campaigns and elections. And so all we got to do is get to November, and it's simple majority. And if it passes, then we'll have that enshrined in Iowa's Constitution.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm excited. Anything else from the legislative session that you think we need to cover?
Well, I think one other important thing, it's more of a technical measure, but I think it's important, is the legislature passed more of a transparency measure, but I still think it's important. It provides a little more focus and puts a little more sunlight on the federal funds and grants that are coming into Iowa. Bill at the end, yep. And so I think that's important, because you just pointed out the $39 trillion in debt. We're seeing a lot of federal policy changes that impacts the federal funds coming into the states, and states need to be prepared for what happens when federal funds get cut. And we're already seeing some challenges with that, because Iowa's facing two big challenges, and those came with Medicaid. We had a $90 million shortfall this time, and for next fiscal year, the shortfall is about $170 million.
Yeah, and there's also times as that it's not just, will the federal government end their commitments, which is very possible, but sometimes there are places where we match funds with the federal government, but we don't have to. And where is there flexibility for the administrative branch or the legislature to maybe make some changes? We should have a robust conversation. I know that Representative Hans Wills has done a lot of work on this, of trying to figure out where we have more flexibility inside of that all the federal dollars that flow down. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of a growing number of measures that we'll probably need to pass as we work towards greater, a more true federalism, but we got a long ways to go on that one.
Yeah.
So.
And one other thing I want to just raise about the session, that's really wasn't our issue, but it's sort of an important thing for me was, and this also made it in the standings bill at the very end, was a civic education bill that would require at the regions. So it kind of puts an end to some of the cafeteria style where students can pick basket weaving or some of these silly courses to fit general education. It would require now a course in United States history, survey, and American government, which I think is a good thing. And this is at University of Iowa, Iowa State, and UNI.
Did I tell you that my my 7th grade daughter just did a section in school on immigration?
Oh, no.
Yeah, we were studying for the test.
Yeah.
She probably didn't get the grade she should have gotten because she chose to review with her dad. So,
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. It's just reminded of that. It was a good time.
But
I had
know,
fun.
But I know Representative Collins and Senator Evans worked hard on that, and so I appreciate their service on that.
Yeah. Well, we will have much more to say on all of these issues, and we are about 1 month away right now, give or take, from primary election day. That's heating up on both sides, so we need to get back here in studio and talk about all of that.
Yeah, Vice President Vance was here last night.
Was here, yeah, and I think you'll see other visits. There's a lot of battlegrounds here, as Iowa is clearly in play. We're not going to pretend that it's not.
Yeah,
so there will be a lot of that. And but as Iowans, we are certainly accustomed to all of that, right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, Vice President's here,
Yeah.
It happens, right?
Yeah.
So, well, good. Thank you, John. That's all the time we got for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. So with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.